So, is anybody surprised that I am back today with a discussion video about another interesting decision that has been made in the literary world? With everything that's been going on, actually, you know, I'm not that surprised. Hey y'all, it's Ashley Bookishrealm. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. So today we're here to discuss something that has hit the literary world by storm in the past 48 hours. If you did not know, news was released because the Roald Dahl company, I don't know if it's considered his estate or not. I don't think I've ever seen them referred to as his estate, but they have made the decision that they are going back through and they are editing Roald Dahl's children's books to contain more inclusive language because, let's be honest, Roald Dahl was no saint. Okay, he said and did a lot of things that are extremely questionable, very controversial, and quite frankly, very racist. He's not known as the best cookie in the package. So there have been edits made by him in the past. I know specifically he did edit Charlie and the Chocolate Factory himself after there was pushback against the reference to the Oompa Loompas and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, because originally they were described in a very racist and inappropriate way. And I believe that NAACP had something to do with that, with the pressures with the movies coming out in the 60s. Here's where I'm gonna probably deviate from what people think I'm going to say, because I'm sure some people are like, oh, this is probably great, and for me it is not great. And honestly, as I always have in my discussions, feel free to agree with me, disagree, always open to have conversation. I just ask that whatever you do, how you interact with me, how you interact with others, just please keep it respectful, because there's so many different ways to perceive what is currently happening. I get where they're coming from to an extent. So there is some offensive language in Roald Dahl's books. That's without fail. There's offensive language in there that I would not even probably read to my own child. The aim and the goal is to make these books accessible to children now and into the future so that they don't miss out on his wonderful stories. However, changing parts of books in that way is a slippery damn slope. Okay? There's so many ways that people can take this and run with it in the future. This is not the author making edits to his work. This is another organization, company, estate putting words into the mouth of this man that did not exist. That is a problem. Because part of it for me is erasure of what this man did. Okay? That is history. It is what it is. Some of these edits are actually pushing us backwards, which they're erasing the word fat from a lot of his books. And for someone who is fat, who is reclaiming the use of the word fat, I don't think that fat is an offensive word for everyone. And it's not something that everyone who is fat feels like we should shy away from. So it's stuff like that. That is like, it teeters on like being a little too much. There is the changing of the description of the spider and James and the giant peach, because her head is described as black. That's being changed. I don't know what was offensive about that. And Matilda, references to Joseph Conrad and Rudyard Kipling were replaced with Jane Austen and John Steinbeck, which in the grand scheme of things, I'm not really sure that including John Steinbeck is much better, especially if you're taking Of Mice and Men into consideration and the disability representation in that book. I don't know if John Steinbeck is the better option here. So basically, any passages that had any reference to weight, I believe, gender, race, violence, mental health were altered, or some passages were completely removed. I'm with Pen America on this one, okay? That is the censorship that we talk about. You can't change what he's already written. It is what it is. If you are looking at it from the perspective of, well, I still want to read his books. Buy them secondhand, have those conversations with your kids, read the books in tandem with something else, which is why I've been doing the banned book diaries and the Is This Book Problematic series, because I want people to be able to have those conversations with their kids about what aspects of the story are enjoyable, but how they might be harmful to another community, and what are better ways that people are being represented now. We don't need to recreate these old stories that are what they are. They're offensive. They are a product of their time. You don't get to just change and alter them to rewrite the narrative and rewrite history. And the author is not even here to reconcile the harm that he's done. Like, that's just awkward for me, especially when you have so many authors from so many different backgrounds already writing stories where kids can enjoy those stories. There's too much being published right now, in this moment, every single week. There's too much being published for us to think that we have to go back and alter things in order to make them enjoyable for kids right now. For me, this is one of those things where it's two things that I see in this. It is a corporation continuing to try to make money. I feel like this is a money grab, because you know that with people becoming more hyper aware of what they're consuming and more hyper aware of representation, you want to keep up with the times, but you can't keep up with the times with an author that's already dead. And I also see this as a way for people to be able to continue to read things that are harmful without having to have those necessary and important conversations. Children's literature has gone through its phases. You have to recognize and reckon with the fact that it has not always been great. It has not always looked out in the best interest of all kids. That doesn't mean that we go back and we rewrite history because we want to make sure that we continue to make money and that people don't feel guilty for reading his books. No one's saying that you don't have to read his books or that you can't read his books or that you should feel guilty, but I think it's a good place to have a conversation. Now, librarians are also split on this. I know librarians who are like, yes, because I want to be able to read these books to my kids. And I'm like, but why? Why must you read that one? Why do you have to read these books when there are other options? There's other things that are more inclusive. You can't keep going back for every dead white man who has written something that has been extremely offensive. Why do you need to go back and fix it? It is what it is. They said what they said. Why do you want to do that? We want to share the magic of these stories. There's other magical stories out there that are read-alikes for Roald Dahl. You don't have to read his stuff if you know that A, you're not the caregiver and it could potentially be harmful to a child, or you're not ready to have that conversation with the child about why this story can be fantastical and you can enjoy it, but also you have to recognize that this is harmful content. The issue that I have with it greatly is that what's to stop people from continuing to do this? Because once you start this, how do you stop it? It's hiding reality. It's hiding fact. Now that you've made this move, what makes you feel like you can't go back and start editing everything that's ever been considered offensive? That's censorship. To me, it is. I think that this is the dangerous part of censorship that PEN America is warning about. It gives this option now. Like, people are going to think that this is an option, that okay, well, we can just go back and edit and erase what this author has done. You can't erase what somebody has already done, especially when that person is not alive themselves to make commentary on the decisions that they made and why they would go back and rewrite and re-edit. You know, it's one thing to hear criticism, the criticism that he heard in the 60s regarding the Oompa Loompas and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's another for someone outside of him now to go back and make those edits and try to change the context of everything so that the material feels more inclusive. I personally just don't feel comfortable with it. I will never ever feel comfortable with censoring or altering or changing unless it's coming from the person who wrote the manuscript. if it's not coming from them, I just don't feel comfortable with it, because you're taking away the truth, the reality of the situation. Now, what's so fascinating about this is that I have been seeing people on both the left and the right kind of agree about this, but in different capacities. I think that a lot of people are blaming this on the left woke mob. And first of all, we're not gonna even get into why I hate that, because y'all need to stop co-opting woke. Like, I really wish everybody would just scratch that from their memories, because it's a co-opted term at this time, and it's frustrating. I think one of the things that stood out to me whenever I was reading kind of the thread from Pen America is that people who are okay with these edits should really consider what would happen if the power to make edits and to retroactively go back and change an author's work was put into the hands of someone who doesn't share your values, your morals, your ethics. Some people are okay with it right now because being diverse and having diverse books, which it's such a tough line, y'all, because as a librarian, you're like, I want diverse books, but people are taking diversity and kind of running with it in a way that is more of a virtue signal than actually wanting to make the necessary changes. But what would you do if this situation was editing not in your favor? Imagine when people could switch out passages of books to fill it in with whatever they feel works in line with their values and morals, and giving it into the hands of a child. It's a slippery slope. It's extremely dangerous. And I personally cannot get behind it, because it opens the floodgates for so many things. There's no reason, I'm going to say this 100 times over because I feel like it's so necessary. There is no reason to go back and try to change what has already been done when you have all of these authors who are trying their damnness right now to get into the publishing industry that are writing from outside of the stereotypical perspective and experience. There's too many people, especially those that are writing for kids. They come out every motherfucking Tuesday. I know this. They come out every Tuesday. So the fact that we are trying to recreate something that is old, that my parents grew up with. These books are books of my parents' childhood. Okay? My parents. Not even mine, really. I mean, I read a lot of it growing up, but these books were published long ago. It is 2023. We have too many opportunities to get it right the first time than to go back and try to make this man look better in the eyes of these kids when that's not the truth. It's not fair to do that. That's not what that man believed. It's not what he stood for. He said what he said. He wrote what he wrote. And yes, it was offensive. I would never say that it's not offensive. It is offensive and it is wrong. It's not right. But you don't get to retroactively go back and say, well, we're just going to fix it. That's not how these things work. So that you can create a generation of kids who did not know that this is what this man was really saying about people. I just don't feel like that's fair. I don't feel like that's fair at all, and I don't feel like that's right. It starts off with small stuff like this, where it's taking this word, and this was in the Pen America thread as well, and I agree. It starts off with taking a word here, and a word there, and a word here, and a word there. And then next thing you know, you're just rewriting the entire thing and repackaging it as if it is the original work. I don't think people understand how wrong this whole entire thing can go. I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my mind around why no one thought about this more, why no one thought about the implications of a decision like this, and were children really being thought about? Because for all of this, it's money is involved in this. Money, we live in a capitalistic society. Money plays a big role in this, because honestly, let the books go out of print, man. Like, let the books go out of print. It is what it is. It's done. But when you're trying to continuously make money, you're re-releasing new covers, you have You know, Disney probably has a deal on the table where they're purchasing the rights to some of this stuff to go ahead and put out movies. Like, of course now you want to make the changes because you know that money's on the table, and it's, you know, you could always make money. I can't tell you how many times they've redone the covers of those books and sold them in box sets and all of this and all of it. Just, I really do struggle. I really am struggling with this because I'm all for books that are inclusive, but I'm not for going back and editing classics so that they could fit in with current time. It doesn't, when authors of this time are already attempting to make sure that their works are inclusive. I just don't, I personally don't get it. I know that some people may disagree with me, but the books are what they are. I don't see the benefit of any child reading a book that has been published 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and it's been edited so that the child can read it now. That means like classics like Little House on the Prairie, which I read, which I told y'all what my issue with Little House on the Prairie was, and revisiting that and editing that so that kids can enjoy the classics that we all got. Like, I just don't, that wasn't their intention, was not to be inclusive, and it is what it is. They didn't write these books with the end in mind and the intention of being inclusive. It wasn't of that time. So now we just are going to go back and rewrite any classic that we can get our hands on. That is, you know, maybe public domain at this point. We could just write, you know, I think this is honestly a perfect time to introduce those critical literacy skills, okay? I think that people are missing the point that kids are capable of having conversations about things in ways that maybe adults don't anticipate them being able to. I think that maybe including a note or having some type of discussion, some pre-reading going on about these books in general, like if you wanted to teach them, or pre-reading, having it's just ways to do, like, y'all. I literally just had a discussion about this for a book that got challenged, okay? And there was someone who put out information on how to use those critical literacy skills to have a conversation about how people could perceive some content and how some content could be deemed as harmful. There's ways to have conversations about this. There's ways to make notice of this. There's ways to better inform readers, just saying, oh, we changed everything, here it is. And it's like, no, like you're changing the actual like work itself. It's not just word, like, you know, word here, word there. Like, there are some passages in these books, the whole context has been changed. And so it's essentially a rewrite. I don't really have much else to add on this, y'all, because I just feel like part of me is still attempting to process the decision that was made and trying to understand where people are coming from in terms of like, oh, I agree with the, you know, that they decided to make changes. I'm trying to be as understanding of that as possible, but I must say that a huge part of me is like I'm really struggling with that. So anyway, as always, as with any of my discussion videos, as I always say, like, share your thoughts, share them in a respectful way, but share your thoughts and let me know in the comment box below, like, have you heard about this? What are your thoughts after hearing me discuss a little bit? Like I said, I will link a couple of articles that I've read myself that I find to be very interesting down in the description box below for you to check out. But stuff like this is dangerous. It is so dangerous. It is so dangerous. But yeah. All right, y'all. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notification. If you're looking for ways to follow me on social media or ways to support the channel, links will be down in the description box below, and I'll be back with another video soon.